Ah, what a beautiful day. The sun is shining, the Bulldogs are singing, and we are destined to win a championship. Oh, do you really think that you could beat me? What the? Who screamed? Me. Why? Because we lost. Why? I don't know, we just lost. Why? We just got outperformed by some small school in the first round. I really thought Oscar Shibwe could bring the trophy home this year. Well, who'd you lose to? Who the hell are you? The St. Peter's Peacocks. I wouldn't be laughing, Boilermakers. And plus, we beat you. Ha! Like that ever happened. Watch your mouth, racers. And plus, we beat you too. Bruh. Well, like every year, March Madness has shattered into chaos. St. Peter's has sparked the internet into hashtag Cinderella, hashtag Peacock Day, and everyone else is like hashtag screw my team underperforming during tournament time. Trust me, I felt it too. Anyway, this year's March Madness was no exception in terms of craziness, and I'm here to do a full run-through of it. Welcome to March Madness 2022. Before we begin, let's get into the format of the tournament real quick. There are 6 single elimination rounds of March Madness, going from the first and second rounds, then the Sweet 16, Elite 8, Final 4, and the championship. The number 1 seed always faces a 16 seed first, which is usually a small school that stands little chance of winning. Then the 2 seed versus a 15 seed, 3 seed versus 14 seed, and so on. Anyway, without further ado, let's start with the first 4. And honestly, I didn't watch the first 4, but here are the winners. Texas, Southern, and Wright State as 16 seeds, and Notre Dame and Indiana as 12 and 13 seeds. So with that, we now have the 64 best teams in college basketball. Anyway, let's see what happened in the round of 64 on the road to the Final Four. Number 1 overall seed Gonzaga faced 16 seed Georgia State in the first round. Gonzaga struggled early in this game, basically on all cylinders. However, they picked up their game in the second half with Drew Timme, or Mr. Mustachio, taking a large victory and advancing to the second round. Memphis bested Boise State in this next game, especially managing around the rim very well with lottery pick Jalen Duren. Then the 12-seeded New Mexico State Aggies took advantage of UConn's struggling offense and pulled off the first official upset of March Madness. But I bet UConn's women's team would have done better. The 4-seeded Arkansas Razorbacks defied the upset by Vermont and defeated them in a close game. After that, the Notre Dame Fighting Irish achieved their second tournament win in an upset, this time against the hot or cold Crimson Tide. For Alabama, despite having an up-and-down season, this was certainly a bad way to go out. Roll Tide, football season is coming. Then, the 3-seed Texas Tech did a Will Smith slap to Montana State. Davidson and Michigan State went back and forth all game long until the Spartans pulled off with the 1-point victory. And finally, for the last game in the West region, the 2-seeded Duke defeated Cal State Fullerton. You know, every team kind of wants to take down Duke during Coach K's very last season, but this wasn't the game. The East started with the number 1 seeded Baylor Bears coming in like a wrecking ball and crushing Norfolk State by 36. They may have multiple key injuries, but the defending champs are not a team to count out. Another blowout and another team not to count out are the 8-seeded North Carolina Tar Heels, who dismantled Marquette. The 5-seeded St. Mary's Gales defeated the Indiana Hoosiers. But hey, look at this cheerleader being the star player. And UCLA, after struggling most of the game against the Akron Zips, stepped up at the end to take a 57-53 victory. Whoa, here comes Virginia Tech. They're doing really well. They recently beat both North Carolina and Duke in the ACC tournament. You know, I bet that they can make it really far in this tournament. Texas beat them in the first round. Now the Ivy League is back from COVID, but their representative Yale couldn't beat 3-seeded Purdue. That could be because Purdue's star Jaden Ivey sparked their offense, bringing them to a large victory. And here comes Murray State, the 7th seed from the Ohio Valley, barely outlasting a relentless San Francisco Dons team in an offensively filled contest that went into overtime. Unfortunately, in the next round they will have to play the tough 2-seed Kentucky. Okay, what just happened? The 15-seeded St. Peter Peacocks, a little-known team from Jersey City, faced one of the most talented teams in the league and won. And I'm talking about amazingly talented players from Kentucky, players that will make the NBA next year. Sorry, Kentucky, but not sorry, you kind of deserved it. Both teams battled closely throughout the entire game, but St. Peter's, as you know, pulled off with the monumental upset. And if that upset didn't already bust every bracket, these next games will. The number 1 seeded Kansas Jayhawks took an easy 27-point victory against the play-in Texas Southern team. After that, Creighton and San Diego State faced off. San Diego State led most of the entire game over Creighton. However, at the end of the second half, the Aztecs did an Atlanta Falcons and choked a 14-point lead. Welp, here's another upset. The 12-seeded Richmond Spiders upset a tough Iowa team who just came off a Big Ten title win. You know, I don't even know what to expect anymore. This is March Madness. Iowa just couldn't shoot that day, I guess. Now, South Dakota State, who is the trendy upset pick, couldn't quite take down the number 4 Providence Friars. Then, the 6-seed LSU and 11-seed Iowa State fought in a low-scoring match, with the underdog Iowa State Cyclones pulling off with the upset with their clutch 3-point shooting. They will face number 3-seeded Wisconsin, who are head-to-head with Colgate until bursting forward late in the game with the help of Johnny Davis. Colgate almost got the upset though. Brush your teeth. Next is a duel between the University of Spoiled Children and Miami. The tall USC group fought their way back into the game and almost got the 3-pointer to win it at the end, but they missed and Miami completed the upset. At last, the 2-seed Auburn Tigers handily defeated Jacksonville State, and were off to the south. Only 8 more games left for the first round. The South region started with the Arizona Wildcats defeating Wright State pretty easily, but as a U of A fan myself, sloppiness and turnovers was an issue in this game. They will face the TCU Horned Frogs, who crushed 8-seed Seton Hall by 27 and held them to a mere 42 with their great defense and rebounding. The 5-seed Houston held a comfortable lead over UAB throughout both halves of the game, finishing with a 14-point victory. Then the underdog Chattanooga Mocs? Anyway, the Mocs at first gave the 4-seeded Illinois a scare, but then the Fighting Illini found themselves back in the game and took a 1-point victory. An overall sluggish performance, and luck came into Illinois' favor. In the beginning of this next game, Colorado State controlled the first half against a number 11-seeded Michigan team. However, as Colorado State started declining at the 3-point line, Michigan found their way back into the game and knocked off CSU by 12. Gosh darn those Michigan Wolverines. Number 3, Tennessee, dominated Longwood on all aspects for 40 minutes, and following that, the 7th-seeded Ohio State Buckeyes defeated Loyola Chicago. And there's really only one person to blame for this loss, and that is Sister Jean. And finally, the Delaware Blue Hens kept up with a strong Villanova team for half the game, but the 2-seeded Wildcats pushed themselves forward for the 20-point victory. My bracket's busted, so there's really no point in talking about it. Let's start with Memphis and Gonzaga. At a certain point in the second half, number 1 seed Gonzaga was down by 12. However, Andrew Nemhard, Drew Timme, and the other odd-looking Gonzaga members rallied them back for the lead and soon the victory. It was a very competitive matchup between both groups, but in the end, the Zags promised their fans they would certainly, definitely, undoubtedly not lose in the second round. And that was the game changer. Then, the Arkansas Razorbacks withstanded the 12-seeded New Mexico State Aggies in a low-scoring and sluggish game. Texas Tech faced the Notre Dame Fighting Irish in a defensively filled battle and won by 6 in the end. Next, Duke and Michigan State battled in a 2 versus 7 matchup. The teams remained side by side until Duke closed it out near the end for a 9-point victory. They never lose, do they? Well, and what a way to begin the second round for the East. The number 1 Baylor Bears, winner of the last tournament, faced the North Carolina Tar Heels in somewhat of a chippy contest. North Carolina led most of the game, in fact by 25 in the second half. Now, as their fans are beginning to snooze to sleep, their star, Brady Manick, the werewolf-looking guy, got a flagrant 2, allowing an incredible comeback by Baylor with the help of James Akinjo. Still though, how do you blow a 25-digit lead? Anyway, after Baylor tied at the end of regulation, North Carolina went into overtime and refused the loss, winning 93-86. And with that, the 1 and 2 seeds of the East have fallen. Now, UCLA played very well near the end and pulled away with a large victory against St. Mary's. Then the Purdue Boilermakers closed the door for Texas, and in yet another upset, the St. Peter's Peacocks, fresh off of a Kentucky victory, defeated 7-seed Murray State to take them to the Sweet 16. St. Peter's is now the third 15 seed ever to make it that far in the tournament. We'll see how they do in the next game against Purdue, though. In the Midwest, number 1 Kansas was up by a single point against Creighton within the final minute, until Ochai Agbaji helped burst the Jayhawks forward with the victory. Next, the Providence Friars smoked the underdog 12-seed Richmond by 28, and 11-seed Iowa State somehow overperformed 3-seed Wisconsin in an upset, earning a spot against Miami. And yes, Miami is a 10-seed. The long-shot Hurricanes absolutely slaughtered the 2-seeded Auburn Tigers by 18 points. And now, the Sweet 16 holds an 11 versus 10 matchup. I am currently losing brain cells. So this next game is 9-seed TCU versus 1-seed Arizona. I said I'm an Arizona fan, so give me a minute or so to talk about this one. So, the Arizona Wildcats barely beat a mediocre TCU Horned Frog squad in overtime and were accused of being bailed out by the refs at the end of regulation. Number 1, look at the free throw numbers. TCU had 5 more. Number 2, I'm not going to get into the questionable officiating part. However, Arizona played a very sloppy game, couldn't shoot threes, and as the tallest team in the league somehow got out-rebounded, especially on the offensive glass. They just weren't aggressive enough throughout the game and came very lucky down the stretch with Mathurin and Koloko. Look though, even if I weren't an Arizona fan, I'd have rather had them in the Sweet 16 rather than Big Eddie and the Horned Frogs. Now, Illinois, off of a lucky victory over Chattanooga, came back against a strong Houston team and really got pummeled. Kofi Coburn was being double-teamed down low, and the Illini couldn't connect their shots, resulting in a 68-53 Houston Cougars victory. And okay, Michigan? Well, as Tennessee fans are complaining that they should be a 2-seed rather than a 3-seed, the gosh darn overrated Michigan Wolverines came in and defeated them. And remember, Tennessee is one of the hottest teams in the league. A real shocker, and the 3-seed falls. Finally, for the last game in the South, 2-seeded Villanova defeated 7-seed Ohio State by 10 to take a spot into the Sweet 16. Now that we've reached the Sweet 16, let's get right into it. Just note that there is an 8-seed, 2 11 seeds, a 12-seed, and a 15-seed left. And this is a shocker that even I didn't expect. The number 1 overall seed Gonzaga fell in a heartbreaker against 4-seed Arkansas in their attempt to reach their 3rd championship in recent years. Gonzaga struggled some in the first 2 games of the tournament, helping the Razorbacks take advantage of that and knock off the Zags earlier than they had expected. Gonzaga fans, just face the fact that you can't win a championship. And yada yada yada, Coach K's last dance continues, blah blah blah. Duke found themselves in yet another losable game against Texas Tech, who has an incredible defense, but Roach and Boncaro came clutch at the end and gave them the victory. Another close and entertaining game that Duke found a way to edge past in the end. Now, 4-seed UCLA fell short against North Carolina, but ignore the score, this was a very close and competitive game throughout, and UCLA led almost the entire game. But in the end, the Tar Heels clutched up, reaching the Elite Eight as an 8-seed, and UCLA's loss knocked out any West Coast team a chance of winning the tournament. Now, Purdue falls yet another victim of St. Peter's tyranny. Really though, the Peacocks actually beat a 3-seed, despite being half of Purdue's height and the heavy underdogs. It was a pretty close game throughout, and St. Peter's, a 15-seed, somehow pulled off the insane upset again, making history. For Purdue, it's sad to see a talented team go down. Actually, no sympathy, you lost to St. Peter's. #Peacock Day. The 1 seed Kansas, unlike Gonzaga, did prevail against Providence. Then 10 seed Miami beat up another team, Iowa State, by 14 to send them dancing into the Elite Eight. They'll have to face the sole 1 seed, Kansas. And yes, I said sole. Arizona pooped their pants and lost as a 1 seed to an injured Houston team without leading a single time throughout the game. It's kinda sad that they again played below their normal standards throughout this entire tournament, because they definitely had a chance to win it all. Just way too sloppy with the ball and horrible shooting, but hats off to Houston, they were the better team, especially on defense this game. At this point, I'd probably cry, but I figure it's pointless because Arizona still got the Suns to cry about. Finally, Michigan's fluke run came up short against the superior Villanova Wildcats, who took a 63-55 victory. Hey, and there we have it, the Elite Eight. 4 teams will go home and 4 will stay, representing their respective regions individually. Arkansas, Duke, North Carolina, St. Peter's, Kansas, Miami, Houston, and Villanova. Any of these 8 have a chance of winning it all, except St. Peter's maybe. Now let's continue. Let's start with Duke defeating Arkansas to earn a spot in the Final Four. Really, I have no insults for Duke this game. The way they played was really great. All 5 starters were playing excellently. They had good shooting numbers, and they basically dominated the entire game, winning 78-69. And of course, they will play North Carolina in a legendary Final Four rivalry game. Really though, the St. Peter's magical run couldn't quite go up against the big boys, as they lost by 20. Next, Kansas smoked the 10 seed Miami by 26. The Jayhawks absolutely dominated the second half on the glass in defensive intensity and at 3-point range. For Miami, however, only 15 points in the second half won't help you upset a 1 seed. And hey, what do you call the best team in the universe? A supernova. Well, they're definitely not the best, but Villanova has been carved with by far the easiest path possible to reaching the Final Four. I mean, they barely beat Houston while only scoring 50 points, having terrible shooting percentages, making all 15 of their free throws, and with Houston shooting 1 of 20 at 3-point range. In my opinion, that's not so impressive for a Final Four team. Pooh you, Arizona. Should have been you. And well, those are the top 4 teams. Duke will face North Carolina and Villanova will face Kansas in the penultimate stage, deciding the 2022 championship matchup in college basketball. Jeez, did this game meet up to its expectations. 8 seed in North Carolina once and for all took Duke home. This game flip-flopped back and forth between a UNC lead and Duke lead and over again. Near the end of the game, however, North Carolina clutched up at the 3-point line, Duke missed their necessary free throws, and UNC at last took out Coach K. Congratulations to North Carolina for making the championship, especially as an 8 seed. In the finals, they will face 1 seed Kansas, who, as I expected, dominated Villanova from the opening to closing minutes of the game. Look, for Villanova, I understand one of their very vital players, Justin Moore, wasn't available, but they just weren't the better team. I mean, Villanova's got a great defense, and Kansas still shot 54% at both the 3-point line and at field goal range. Personally, Kansas has my pick to win the tournament. And the 1 seed prevails. This game was good, not exceptional, somewhat sloppy, and full of injuries on UNC's side. Kansas started strong within the first 5 minutes. Then North Carolina went on a good run to head into a 15-point advantage at half. However, UNC couldn't box out Kansas, helping the Jayhawks tie the game in a matter of minutes. Kansas then clutched up at the end, holding a 3-point lead within the final 20-ish seconds. Now, Caleb Love of the Tar Heels, the guy who made many clutch plays to pave their way into the finals, had been very off this game. No passing from him, just dribble, drive, and miss. As UNC's clutch player, of course he took a long 3 to tie, bricked, took another 3, missed, and then within 3 seconds he had another 3 to tie and airballed. Again, the game wasn't the best. The second half execution by North Carolina was bad, but Kansas took the trophy in the end. Should have been Arizona, but congratulations Kansas for winning your 29th title or whatever. Roll credits. Numerically speaking, there were 21 upsets and 36 games within singular digits. All the brackets were busted within the first round, which tells us that this was definitely another good tournament. Well, that's it. Sayonara, Slip and Sammy signing out.